Have you ever wondered why it is that whenever the Dragon Ball story has room for other characters to participate within the plot, Majin Buu is usually never among the cast that's summoned? Be it Daima, ROF, the Universe 6 Saga, the Tournament of Power, and the Superhero Saga, these are a few examples of where the Majin could have been used and would have been a great help to our heroes. However, in many of these instances, the pink blob is always conveniently sleeping, and what's crazier is that you can't even wake him up, essentially assuring that he would be sidelined for the entirety of said arc. So why have a character like Buu exist if you practically never use him? I mean, after all, this character has an extremely diverse and unique power set that could really turn the tides of battle on its head. Well, my dear viewer, to put it simply, the reason Majin Buu always gets sidelined is because Buu is a boring character. And I think Toriyama knew that. Now, I'm not saying that he's boring in the conventional sense, where something is considered dull and uninteresting, because Buu's antics are far from what would induce proper boredom. No, Buu is boring in the sense that due to his ridiculous hacks, the Majin could take whatever stakes there are in a serious narrative and evaporate them. We'll go over a few examples of this soon. However, the other part that makes this character boring is that Buu in and of himself doesn't push the story in any real direction. And this is due to one huge factor, that being that Majin Buu has the mentality and antics of a child, and because of this it's almost impossible to make him take anything seriously, unless we're talking about food or Mr. Satan. Even before Buu split from his evil side, he didn't push the plot as much as other villains have in the past, as he had to quite literally be commanded by Babidi in order to be considered an actual competent threat. And due to this, the moment that the wizard ceased to exist, Buu is more like a force of nature rather than a well-structured character with goals that push the narrative in ways that we haven't already seen before. He wasn't trying to take over the earth like King Piccolo, or trying to gather the Dragon Balls for a wish like Vegeta and Frieza, and he wasn't looking for a perfect battle to sate his ego like Cell. No, Buu was doing things just because he wanted to. He didn't have a real goal, and the moment that he splits from his evil side, this character is reduced to an ongoing sleeping gag and Mr. Satan's bodyguard. Even when we do see him participate within the Moro Saga, he's just reduced to a vessel for a character that he absorbed eons ago. Sure, he had one decent fight, but it didn't tell us more about this character or even try to flesh him out, as his consciousness was essentially tampered with, allowing the Grand Supreme Kai's memories to be brought to the forefront. If not for this, all of Buu's dialogue would have gone something like this: Buu hates you, Buu make you pay, and let's not forget, turn into chocolate, etc. And if you're a fan of Dragon Ball that dives a little deeper into the underlying narrative of the story, told primarily through its battles, then you'd know that Buu wouldn't allow for any of this to happen, as within the Moro Saga, one of the narratives of that story revolved around the battle between undeserved stolen power and the power derived from one's own true strength. Within this saga, there are a number of moments that show this, with Moro's failure to control the power of Ultra Instinct being the conclusion of this narrative bout. But with Buu, you can't really do this. Not only does he strip battles of their stakes, but he also reduces the narrative of said battles into what many casual fans think Dragon Ball is all about: just a fight. However, it's more than just how he fights that does this, and is the other point I wanted to talk about, because the other reason that Buu is such a, I guess the right word would be problematic, is due to the sheer amount of hacks he has access to. I mean, honestly, compared to the likes of Goku, who is arguably the strongest Z fighter out of the current Big 5, even he would lose to the likes of Buu if the Majin actually took his training seriously, as the only thing stopping him from stomping the Big 5 probably all at once is due to his lack of power, regeneration on par with the likes of immortality, an ability akin to the multiform technique that allows him to make multiple versions of himself or his body parts without losing power, mind you, the Candy Beam, and the best absorption ability within the series, which also gives him the techniques and knowledge of the absorbed opponents on top of their strength. This is everything that Buu has access to, but if you think this is where his hacks stop, you'd be wrong. As due to the Moro Saga, we know that when the Majin has access to the Grand Supreme Kai's memories, he can use his techniques, which include a massive increase to power, which is probably due to God Ki, the ability to heal himself and others, which I think is an ability he already has, the Kai Kai, which is just a better version of instant transmission, telekinesis, mind reading, and lastly the Kai's creation ability. All of these broken techniques are all in the hands of this one character that rarely gets used. And if you're thinking that the antagonists of Super are far stronger than Buu, meaning that these hacks won't do much, then yeah, you'd be right. However, the thing is, if Buu wanted to get stronger, he easily could, as seen when he trains for only a few hours, and gains a jump in power that impresses and seemingly contends with post-Future Trunks Saga based Goku. Just give this man a year in the time chamber and he'd catch up in no time, or just have him absorb any villain from Super. Moving on, now here is where I'll show you why this character was never in any saga he could have been in, and for the sake of showing how ridiculous his hacks are, we'll just say that Buu would be around the level of Goku and Vegeta. However, even if he wasn't on their level, he could still be a problem, which I'll get to in a second. In Daima, he could have easily defeated the Tamagamis, and when it came to Third Eye Goma, he could have either turned him into candy or absorbed him. If those don't work, then he could have used his multiform technique to hit the back of Goma's head 3 times with ease. In ROF, he could have single-handedly defeated all of Frieza's henchmen. As for Frieza himself, he could again either turn him into candy or absorb him. If those don't work, then he could wear Frieza down through his absolutely insane regeneration until the tyrant lost his golden form and then eliminate him. In the Tournament of Destroyers, he'd be going after Vegeta, so he'd be aware of his time skip. However, seeing as absorption would probably be against the rules, he could just turn the assassin into a piece of candy and toss him out of the ring. Unless Hit does what Vegito did and starts time skipping as a piece of chocolate. But even if that doesn't work, the Majin could just overwhelm the assassin with his multiform technique and eventually defeat him. The only way I see him losing this is if they quite literally ban all of Buu's abilities. In the Tournament of Power, Buu could use the strategy from the previous tournament in order to eliminate a large amount of contestants. However, when it comes to Jiren, I really don't think there's much he'll be able to do. But due to his healing abilities, he'd be able to keep Team Universe 7 topped up on their strength, allowing them to win the tournament much easier. Unless of course Jiren goes straight for the Majin. And finally, within the superhero saga, when it comes time to fight Cell Max, not only would he be able to heal up Piccolo, which would allow the Namekian to perform much better than he did in canon, but he'd also be able to keep Cell Max at bay with the use of the multiform technique, keeping the giant distracted, allowing Gohan to fire off the special beam cannon without the other Z fighters putting themselves in danger. So within every arc he could have been in, he makes reaching the outcome far easier and trivializes many of the threats. However, even if we took away the caveat of Buu being on par with Goku and Vegeta in order to keep his hacks in play, all he would have to do is get away with absorbing one single villain to make him somewhat relevant, be it Frieza, Goku Black, Zamasu, Broly, Moro, Granola, Gas, Gamma 1 or 2, you name it, he just needs one. And he'd be a problem for the rest of the series. And why stop there? If there ever came a time where they couldn't defeat a foe, Buu could quite literally just absorb Goku and Vegeta to make a Majin warrior of immense strength. This character is ridiculous, and mind you, these are just with his base abilities. If I were to add the abilities of the Grand Supreme Kai, he'd be even more of a problem. So next time you hear that Buu is sleeping, just remember that at any moment, if done correctly, Buu could turn any serious arc into his plaything. The only thing holding this character back is the writer, and for good reason. Anyways, thank you to everyone that watched this video. I hope you all have a great day. Peace, deuce.